to this week's show with my special guests, the mighty Kirk.
Good evening.
And our special guest from NUFC Matters, Steve Wraith.
Good evening. Thanks for having us on, lads.
You're welcome.
All right, Steve, lads.
And this week's show, we're going to be focusing on the Jam, okay, the great British band from the 70s and early 80s. So before we start, before we do any of the album ranking and all the rest of it, just let's our general thoughts about the Jam and when we got into them and stuff. Kirky, would you want to kick off?
Yeah. When I first was getting into music, a massive two-tone fan, and the Jam were quite a bit more advanced to the stuff I was listening to. So I'm not going to say I was there at the start. My pal was the bigger Jam fan, and I was the bigger Madness fan. As time rolled on, I became the bigger Jam fan, and he kind of linked it a bit more than the Madness as well. So kind of roles reversed, but fantastic. You know, we're going to talk about the Jam all day because all my clothes are still all mod. I still like everything mod, and that's just the way it is. Just roll with it. Everything goes back to how great the Jam are. No matter if anybody's talking about any band today, you know, how Oasis or Stereophonics or whatever, you know, bands like that, the Jam are still 10 times better, and they influenced them all, even if they didn't.
That's fair point. Fair point. Steve, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was born in '72, so I missed seeing the Jam live. Lucky enough in later life to promote the Jam as they became from the Jam, Bruce Foxton and Rick Buckler and the Russ Hastings who took over from Weller, if you like. So it's a weird love that I've got for the Jam. They are my favourite band of all time, and I guess I got into them at school. It was a guy who one of the lads who I was in school with, Nigel. He basically got me listening to them, and it was the Setting Sons album that he introduced me to. And we used to do impromptu gigs in the bloody playground, and the girls used to like stand round us, and we'll be doing all the jumps, the Bruce Foxton jumps in the air, etc. But that's how I got into them. And I mean, of course, it was either vinyl or cassettes back in those days, and just being able to stick the records on my dad's record player, and then eventually my record player was fantastic. And ultimately the first band that broke me heart as a kid as well, because for me, when that horrible day came where the announcement was made that the Jam was splitting up, I was absolutely devastated, and it took me a long time to get over that. And I never thought I would like another band again. But,
I mean, yeah, that's great. I mean, for me, I went to it was in Westerhope Middle School, which was a crazy school in hindsight, and no uniforms. Everybody came dressed as either punks, mods, Teds, whatever it was. So you all had to rock up with the clobber at the time, and we were all in gangs. It was very much a little gang culture in the middle school. It was bizarre. But I got into the Jam because I remember this girl she was called Susie. I can't remember her surname. And she was really massively into them in '78. And I just remember she was hopping on about down at the tube station. And I'll give it a listen. And from that minute onwards, absolutely adored them. Sadly, like the rest of us, never got to see them. Just literally 6 months out from going to my first gig. So, yeah, just missed it right at the end. I was absolutely gutted. I mean, for me, I think that there are a couple of other bands who've come along since the Jam who've been massive, and maybe I think the Smiths are as influential without a shadow of a doubt.
I think from a band's perspective, like the one I've come nearest to was early Arctic Monkeys. I really found them a buzz in them, and I got a chance to see them live for the first few gigs in Newcastle, and I thought, wow, this is like watching the Jam again. This is fantastic.
I think they're one of them. I think there's a few of those bands. There's not many, 3 or 4 bands who've come along and have got that sort of following, that real following. But the Jam following was massively intense. And I think one of the things that we're watching, I know there's a few people who watch this in the States now. And what people don't realise, probably between 1980 and 82, the Jam were the biggest band in this country, in the UK. The Police might have been the biggest band worldwide, and a great band as well. But in the UK, the Jam were the biggest band. I mean, they got songs that just went straight in at #1, which hadn't happened since Slade. I think they were the first band since Slade to just literally go straight in at #1. I think it was Going Underground. So, yeah. just immense band. And as you say, gutted when they split, but in hindsight, it was probably the right thing to do. Probably the right
it took
thing
me
to
a while
do.
to get into the style council because I blame Paul Weller for all of this. I just felt he shafted the other two guys, and I really just didn't like the style council either. And it's one of those things that's grown on us years later. I love Weller's early solo stuff. I love all of that, and I've been to see Weller, numerous occasions, and not so fond of the more recent stuff that he's done, but that early Stanley Road stuff was just fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. I'm actually Fat Pop's a great album. I have to say, I love it. But I can see why people might get a bit sort of, it's all right or it's not all right. I love most of his solo stuff. It's fantastic. But yeah, Stanley Road is just truly exceptional album. But anyway, let's dive into the show. Before we do that, folks, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe, please. We really want to bang those numbers up, so please hit the button. Right, folks. As you can see on this screen, I've just put the rankings of the show. We're going to do 6 albums, and unusually, yes, we are going to include a compilation album, and we're going to include Snap. And the reason why I'm going to include Snap is because it's got 10 songs that don't feature on any of the albums. And we personally just discussed it and felt that 10 songs is an awful lot, really, and we felt that Snap should be included. Now, as you can see on the rankings here, we've got ranking stars from 5 to 0 or 0.5, 5 being a masterpiece, 4.5 essential, 4 excellent, 3.5 very good, 3 good, 2.5 is fair, 2 is weak, 1.5 very poor, 1 is awful, and we've had one 1-star album with The Madness, which is just terrible. And then 0.5 with Don't Bother. I don't think we've had a Don't Bother yet, Kirk.
No. Well,
The Madness.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll pick something. There's got to be that Shawadi Wadi or Mud album out there, hasn't there? So,
I've never said against Mud. Right.
Yeah.
So, Kirk, we'll let you start first. We're going to rank those albums then. So we've got the 7 albums. Which one do you have at the bottom? And give us your thoughts.
The bottom of the pile for me is In the City. Now, a bit like what Steve was saying there. When I was getting into the jam, Setting Suns was kind of the first album I listened to. And the repackaged In the City and This Is the Modern World is a double album.
Yeah.
So we got to listen to both of those albums together. And I just found it was just very raw, harsh. It didn't really seem to have, musically, they just advanced so much after those 2 albums. So In the City, there's still some tracks I really like on it, but overall as an album, it's to me it's the weakest album, and it has a 3.
Okay, 3 stars, did you say?
3, yeah.
Right. Okay, that's still 3, still good.
It's always going to be good. There's no terrible.
Interesting. Okay, Steve, how about yourself?
I've got to be honest, I've gone for the same album and I've given it the same mark because ultimately for me, there's some really weak tracks on there. The Batman theme, I know it's only, a minute and a half long or something, but it's, I just find that like a complete waste of time on an album, especially for an up and coming band at the time. But what pulls it back round is there is some good old fashioned jam tracks on there, with some wonderful Weller vocals. So like Art School, again, a couple of minutes that track, but it's a really big, strong guitar riffs and some great vocals from Weller. I love Away from the Numbers, which is a little bit of a it's a little bit of a pointer to the direction that the Jam are eventually going to go into, and of course In the City, which is the title of the album, is another like stomping track. But there's Batman theme lets it down for me. I don't like Taking Me Love either. It's not for me. And Sounds from the Street as well. I'm not. They're not ones where, if you're going to go and stick a jam track on there, they're not songs that you're going to pick up and put on, and that's why that finishes bottom of the pile for me. But yeah, the strong tracks, your Art School, you're Away from the Numbers, that's why, that for me pulls itself around a little bit and gets to 3.
Great. Okay, good. Right, well, I'm going to book the trend slightly, and I've gone for This Is the Modern World, which came out in '77. It was the second album in the year, and loads of bands seem to do 2 albums in a year in those days, you know, the likes of the Stranglers and stuff, you know, although, to be fair, both of their albums are brilliant. But for me, it's all right. I mean, you know, This Is the Modern World's a great song. It's got that Pictures of Lily chord thing going on, which is terrific, with the stops and that. There's some really good songs on it. I think London Traffic's actually a terrific song. It's very Monkeys-like, actually. Got a real nice catchy guitar riff and that on it. Some of them are decent, like Standards. I think there's some all right songs on it. I think I've written all right average, like The Combine and, you know, I Need You. Here Comes the Weekend's a bit dark and edgy. Tonight at Noon's very Townsend, very Who. The Midnight Hour, it just sounds like they said, we're run out of tunes, let's whack in a cover version, which they were doing live anyway. But as I say, I like the Standards. I think it's very good. But yeah, it doesn't do it for me. And I actually just think it's fair. It's all right. I've gone 2.5 stars. Okay, so that's 2.5 stars for that one for Modern World. So there we go. Kurt, what have you got in it next then?
Next, I have This Is the Modern World. I quite like the cover, and you can see a change in the band from kind of like obviously wanting to pull away from the punk and sort of, you know, maybe stand alone. Love Weller with the arrows, you know.
Well, the cover's just Grenfell's in the background. You know, the towers. It's literally you got the 2 towers, and just behind it was Grenfell. So it's in West London.
I'm looking at the cover now. Yeah, just remember, you can just see there's something happening. The standout track for me in this album was Light from a Window. I used to love that. Well, still do love that song. I think it's a great track. And talking about like all the bands, Steve, that you've put on, I never saw the Jam live, and you know, I probably never ever will. It was always like kind of one of my dreams. Like one day they'll reform, we can all go to Wembley, and I can just get it out of the way. But I've seen I've tried to see every single Jam tribute band, and there's been some stinkers, but there's been some absolutely brilliant ones. Going to the Riverside on the wettest night ever, you know, there was about 8 of us upstairs, and I was shot on that same night. SLF played downstairs with Foxton, so it was just brilliant. Anyway, you know, like how we get to do 2 bands in one night, or 3 if you're very lucky. So again, I think there's a lot of weak tracks. There's a lot of okay tracks on the album. Obviously, This Is the Modern World, Standards. Yeah, as you say, a good track as well. Apart from that, it's quite bland. It's not one of the, you know, I wouldn't pull it out. There's a handful of songs that I do like to listen to, but there's so much better to come, and you can just see the foundations were being put in for the following album. So I will be giving that one a 3 as well.
Okay, Steve, so how about yourself?
I've gone for exactly the same album again, The Modern World. This Is the Modern World, and I've given that a 3.5. I think there's some good tracks on there, and you know, again, it is progress, I think, but again, it's let down by a couple of weak songs, which I don't understand the logic. It almost feels as if some of the songs were put on just to fill the album out a little bit. It always grabs me as well how short some of the songs are. Yeah. You know, when it's only when you start looking into it and doing a bit of research for the program, I always felt like London Traffic was like it was a long song, but it's 1 minute 51 seconds. You can't believe it. But The Modern World, great song. It's a great opening to the album. I'm not a fan of I Need You, but then we go into Standards, which is a good song. I've always liked London Girl, and I just love the chorus to it as well. I think that's really good. Lyrically, my favorite song on the album is Don't Tell Them You're Sane, which is a really good really good song. And then All Around the World is another good track. I like Light from a Window as well. I think it's just great lyrics. You know, it tells a story, that particular song. And I tonight at noon, you know, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I think that's the thing with these first two albums with the Jam. These are the first albums that, you know, the band put out there and put out into the world. And, you know, you pick one day, you could probably listen to the whole thing and really enjoy it, and then another day it's not the first one you would pick up. But yeah, I'm giving it 3.5. I think it is better than In the City, and for me, it deserves just slightly more than what I gave that album. But yeah, that's my second selection.
Yeah. Because All Around the World's on the US version, isn't it? Which is a great song. It's an absolutely top draw song. It really is. I love it. It's one of my favorite songs by them.
Was that a single release as well?
Yeah, it was. It was a single release. Hence the inclusion of Snap. Because in the US they've all got that version, but in the UK we didn't have it on. So much was the sort of process of releasing albums in those days. I mean, the first Clash album is totally different in America, isn't it? There's about 4 different tracks on it. It's massively different. So yeah, that was very much the case. Right, well, my number 6 is actually the first album, The Jam, which obviously came out in 77 as well, early 77. I think there's some terrific songs on it. Art School is brilliant, absolutely love it. There's loads of Who influence on this album. It's probably without a doubt the most Who influenced album that Well I Ever did. And I think it's almost fair to say that the Small Faces are probably his favorite band, but obviously the Who were a big influence. And there's some good songs on it. There's some all right songs on it. The influences are dead obvious on the album. Slow Down, it just sounds like a Dr. Feelgood song. Away from the Numbers, absolute 5-star classic for me. Batman is it's basically a homage to the Who, because it was on the Who's Ready Steady Who EP. So that was on that, hence the fact that they've covered it. There was also the Who did a song called In the City as well, which it doesn't really sound the same, but they've obviously taken the title from it. Sounds from the Streets, very 60s, very 60s. But there's some rubbish on it as well. I've written Non-Stop Dancing. I just wrote, nah. Time for Truth, yeah, again, not great. Take Me Love, again. But one I really do love is Bricks and Mortar. I think it's a great song. It's very simple, but it just works. I really like it. Just for the sheer ingenuity of the time and being different from the rest of the so-called punk bands, because they were doing the whole mod aesthetics and the thin ties and the white shirts and the matching shoes and all that. And they looked really different. See the Pistols or the Clash, who claimed not to have a uniform, although you could argue what they were wearing was some form of uniform. And I've given it 3 stars just because it's not an album I ever put on. It's really not. I'd be lying if I said, oh, I'm going to put In the City on today. But I'll certainly pick some of the songs, and like everybody else does, put a playlist and you might get 3 or 4 songs off the album on it. So it's a 3 stars for me because there's some really good songs, great songs on it, and some good songs. So there we have it. Kirk, what have you got in it? Number 5.
Number 5, I have The Gift. At the time, I didn't know what to expect. I thought things were just going to get better and better, and it kind of. I'll look back on this in later years, you know, and probably enjoy the album a lot more. But it didn't take us where sound effects, you know, completely hell as everything I could relate to. He was starting to change, obviously, while I was onto his next project in his head. And the band's music is kind of reflected in this, you know. It's just a lot more jazzy and just the way it sounds. I mean, there's a lot of good songs, but they're not the best Jam songs. I'm not going to take too many things with us on this. I'm Happy Together, Ghosts, Precious. You know, that they're kind of like really good B-sides, but not. I wouldn't say that strong. Again, it's not my favorite. I don't listen to it that much, so there's not really. I mean, it's got Town Called Malice on there, which is absolutely roaring. But apart from that, there's a lot just kind of just passes us by. I cannot really grab onto it. So with that one, it's a 3.5, and basically because it's kind of. It's well as planned. I think it's his sleeve, you know, he's planning out what he's going to do next, and he's kind of probably dropping in loads of clues. And that's probably my as far as I can go with that one.
Steve?
3.5.
I'm going to put Snap in now because it's a compilation album,
right, okay.
and you know it's because of that. It's because of that and that only. It's look, there's some great songs on it.
Yeah.
It's a compilation album. It's not going to be full of duffers, is it? But it comes down to that old adage of you either like compilation albums or you don't. And we've had so many compilations albums of the Jam over the years that, you know, when one comes, there's, you know, the next one comes. Well, what's really different about it, you know? And I think the frustration about compilation albums to me is that it's somebody else's idea of the Jam's greatest collection, not mine. So there's always going to be songs on there that you're not a fan of. I think my favorite compilation album of the Jam was Dig the New Breed, because it was different. Do you know what I mean? And you know, there was some good live tracks on there, and I think that's why that was different in anything else that I'd ever heard. So yeah, I mean, going through the track list again, you know, there's some great songs on there, and you know, start off within the city, the copy that I've got, and you know, finishes with you know, the bitterest pill. So, you know, for me, it's great. It's got one of my favorite songs on there, which is Tales from the Riverbank. That's in my top 3 all-time, you know, favorite Jam songs. And some other bangers on there, such as, you know, Start the Eating Rifles, Going Underground. But yeah, it was a difficult selection, you know, and difficult really to know where to place that. And just purely because there was nowhere else I could put it with the rest of my order, that's why the compilation album goes in there for me. But marks wise, I'm going to give it a 4.5.
That's fair enough. I think we did something similar with the Smiths ones. It was difficult because of, as you say, them being compilations. But we did include Snap just because of those 10 songs or more, actually, with like Tales from the Riverbank and stuff. Actually, yeah, there's more when I think about it. Yeah, right. Okay, that's an interesting one. And Dig the New Breed's interesting as well, because we could have included it, we didn't. Although I have to say there's some great live songs on there. I love Big Bird, their version of the Eddie Floyd song. I think it's fantastic. That's a really great song. Right. Well, what I've got now for my number 5 is The Gift. It was released in March '82. It got to number 1. So at this point, they were just enormous. They've got rid of the sort of post-punk sound effects, and they've gone into that funk sort of style, soul-y sort of music that was really very much in fashion at the time. I mean, there are bands at the time who were very influential, and people forget about, like Beggar and Co., who were involved in, you know, Spandau Ballet's Chant Number 1, which could easily have fitted onto this type of album. Actually, it's very much along those sort of grooves. So the album is almost split into 2 halves in some respects, not in terms of the layout of the album, but the sounds. There's some classic old Jam sounds on the album, and then there's definitely that way forward, as Kirk was saying, and going into that soul sort of style, but very funk ridden in this album. So it starts off with an old Jam style song with Happy Together, which is just great, you know, and it's one of my favorite Jam songs, and it's a 5-star song for me. And then Ghosts, again, could have been on Old Mod Cons or anything. It's lovely, but it's soulful. But then you suddenly get into Precious, and you've got that wah thing going on, that sort of thing, you know, straight out of the 70s, really funky, really cool groove, dead heavy bass. And then it changes again. You got Just Who's the 5 O'Clock Hero with a big brass section going on. If you took away the brass section, it could have been on sound effects, but it's, you know, there's a definite movement there. Trans Global Express, Circus Planner's Dream, they're the songs for me that let the album down. I think they're all right. I don't think they're amazing. I'm not a huge fan of the Caribbean drum sound on the Planner's Dream. I just think they're all right. And then the rest of the album's great. I mean, Carnation is an absolute classic. Town Called Malice, I think it's against the law not to get up at a party and dance to it and shout all the words out. That is the law. It's the last time I checked. And then The Gift, good song. I would have argued that Absolute Beginners, which was recorded beforehand, should have been on. And maybe The Great Depression, which I do like as a song as well, should have maybe been on. And I really like it. It's been a while since I played this album. I did it for the show. I thought, I'll put it back on. It's been a while and it's definitely gone up my estimation. So I've given it 4 stars. I think it's excellent. There's some really top Jam songs, and I was talking to my friend Simon, and who knows Kirk today when we're playing golf, and we're discussing this album. He goes, "Oh, that's one of my favorite Jam albums," and we got into the whole conversation of it. So yeah, 4 stars for me. Kirk, what have you got in at number 4?
And number 4 is Snap. But before we go on to, about Snap, so you know when Gino feels, you know, when you put it on and nobody gets up to dance, is it followed by Ten Cold Malice? Is that your get out of jail card?
It's me get out of jail card. So when I played Gino, I've mentioned on another episode, I got Gino up at a party and the dance floor just emptied.
Yeah, everybody went.
If I have a DJ though, if I have a DJ, Town Cold Malice goes on and everybody runs up and dances. So it's absolutely nailed on. But Gino, yeah, sorry, Gino still hurts. Still hurts. It's there. Kirk, what have you got next?
It's Snap. I think it's a great album. I know we're a bit funny about compilations because they shouldn't really fit in, because compilations, I just think, are for people who don't really know anything about the band. But obviously that was put together very cleverly, and there's a lot of things on there for fans as well. It's not an album I would go to and listen to, but it has everything I think you want, and it's really, really well packaged. It's a tremendous. It's got some great pictures on as well. So it's in there. It's not nowhere near as good as like Hatful of Hollow, you know, which is kind of like, as we've talked about, like Radio 1 versions and things like that. Maybe the Jam kind of needed something like that. It's better than the previous albums I've put on, and only for the reason that there is a lot of tracks that aren't on albums. And the Jam were a bit funny like that, where they'd release an album and then you'd get a single that wasn't on the album. I mean, that's marketing. That's just crazy. That, I mean, to me, it was.
They did extras, didn't they, Kirk? A few years later, in the early '90s, I think, which had loads of extra tracks that could have maybe been on Snap. You know, like their version of "Get Yourself Together" and "Your Bird Can Sing" by the Beatles, and they were great versions. And then there was a couple of Style Council songs that they clearly recorded with Weller as well, which didn't appear on Snap either. Well, so what?
So that comes in for me. Well, Snap. I've put a 5 down.
So you have to then.
It's a 5. It's
Right,
very,
5
very
is.
good. It's you know, you'd be very proud to have it in your record collection. Did you get the EP with it as well?
Yes, you did. You got a live EP as well.
Yeah. Because I was talking to somebody and I was talking about that album recently, and I said, "Oh, did you not get the EP with it?" And he'd never even seen the EP. I said, "That's, you know, it's quite." You know, you can easily pick it up. I think they pressed a lot of copies as well, so a lot were given away free, and a lot came with that. But yeah, it's really good, but there's some better stuff to come.
Okay, so what have you got then, Steve?
So I've got The Gift next, because, you know, again, my top albums, you know, are my favorite albums, and they have to go in place. So this Gift album it wasn't my favorite. Obviously it had an interesting way of packaging, if you remember, because it had gift wrapped. The original album that came out was in a pink and white gift like set, and it was tucked in. And I mean, the album covers, you know, it's good. Obviously, they're running on the spot, which of course is one of those songs on the album. I just didn't get it, and I guess that was down to me, you know, the age at the time. I listen to it now, and there's some of those songs are precious. It's not one of my favorite Jam tracks at all. I wasn't really into Trans Global Express, and again, that circus instrumental wasn't my favorite. And those 3 tracks are one after another on the album. You know, like 3, 5, 7. They just interject with good songs, and you're like, it spoils the album for me, if I've got to be perfectly honest. But then there's some great songs on there. Carnation is up there with English Rose.
Yeah,
you know, the lyrics are great. It gets the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, and it's, you know, it's just a brilliant song. I really like Just Who Was the 5 O'Clock Hero. It was almost a bit of a rewind back to the Jam of the late 70s with the lyrics, and it showed that there was still a bit of a bit of fight against the system in Weller with that one. The Planet's Dream Goes Wrong was another one for me. And like you mentioned before, when you were talking about this album, A Town Called Malice, I mean, Billy Elliot, of course, the film was what really, cemented that in the nation's hearts. But as Jam fans, we all loved that, and it was it's just a brilliant track. Happy Together is good as well. And as I say, it's not the worst album in the world, but I think, as you pointed out as well, it showed that there was a transition. It showed that there was a change. It pointed in the direction that Weller was going in. And all in all, every time I listen to it, I still feel sad for the other band members, because it was quite clear that Weller had his plans and that didn't involve the lads, and it was all good things come to an end, and the Jam did, and this album, is testament to that. So yeah, for me, again, I'm not going to give it a poor mark, but I'm going to give it 3.5.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's interesting. I believe they're all friends now as well, and I remember I had tickets for Weller at the Albert Hall. Must be 10 years ago or 9 years ago, whatever it was. And I couldn't go. I was at work and something happened. I couldn't go. So I gave me mate Ian, and I think he took his wife along instead. And bloody Foxton got up that night, didn't he? And they did Start and some other song as well. Like, I was absolutely gutted, absolutely choked. And I believe Foxton records now at Weller's studio, and that they're all good mates. So that
they pulled together after the death of Bruce Foxton's wife. Yeah.
So that's nice to hear, like, isn't it? You feel a little bit happier now, and especially with all the new things that they've got going on and the exhibitions, and they all seem to be getting on. So that's good. You sort of, that sense of almost closure, isn't it? And that sense of relief.
Yeah,
that's good. Right, my number 4 is also the compilation route, is Snap. And I've just written here, it's one of the best greatest hits albums ever, if that makes any sort of grammatical sense ever. For me, there are certain albums, and I've mentioned this before, that should be given to you on your birth, and be injected into part of your DNA. ABBA Gold, for example, or the best of the Bee Gees, Slade's greatest hits, any Great Madness collection. And I think Snap is one of those. I mean, obviously it's full of like other album hits, like Town Called Malice and Start and Eating Rifles and whatever, but there's loads of non-album tracks that are just absolutely fantastic all around the world. News of the World, which of course was on the TV show, forgot what they call it, Mock the Week Now, which is dead catchy. Strange Town, When You're Young, Funeral Pyre. I mentioned it on another show recently, and it's one of my favorite Jam songs. It's just fantastic, and it's one of those rare songs that all three of them wrote. Absolute beginners. Going Underground. I mean, I still remember 1988 when Going Underground came. I heard it for the first time. I was playing football bizarrely on a field, and somebody had some enormous ghetto blaster, as he did at the time. And I remember I stopped playing football, and I just heard the chords. I thought, what the hell is that? And I just thought, oh my God, that's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it's one of those moments that just sticks with you, It's what a song, what an absolute song. Well, I said it's the song he wants to get buried to, which is quite humorous with Going Underground. I thought that was quite amusing. Some great songs. I think there's a better version of Precious on it. Bitterest Pill, Beat Surrender. What a song to finish with. And which other artist can get the word succumb to get to number 1 in the charts in a song and get it to number 1? Because it's just a word that never gets used. I think it's very clever. Great compilation. It's 5 stars all the way for me. So from this moment on, we're on 5-star territory. And I just think it's one of those essential compilations that everybody should have. I remember the day it came out, I rushed and got it, got the EP as well. But the album, there were different versions on. I'd never heard that version of That's Entertainment before, for example. And it's something I play loads. I mean, to get myself in a good mood when I go to the match, sometimes I'll put Snap on. It's something I listen to on the metro on the way into the game. So it's one of those, it's also a lucky omen. If we win, it'll go on for like the next 5 or 6 games or whatever, It's just great. What an album. What an absolute banger of an album. So there we go. 5 stars for me. Kirk, what you got next? What's number 3?
Oh no, we're cooking on gas now, right? Setting Suns. Oh God, I think this was the first kind of, well, it was the first album that I'd fully listened to. I didn't get it obviously when it came out, so it was just the first album that came along right from the start. It kind of had a feel of it, obviously, like a story, proper story. You could see that what was happening behind the songs. Every single, I think Heatwave is probably my least favorite, but I think every single other song on there is absolutely fantastic. You know, Girl on the Phone, Thick as Thieves, Private Hell, we can just go on. Wasteland, Burning Sky. I mean, Smithers Jones is just, you know, fantastic as well. Saturday's Kids. Well, that song is just like about us, you know, everything you used to do, you know, being on One Armed Bandits, you know, they never win, but it's not the point, is it? You know, it's just fantastic. Eating Rifles, a fab album. Love the cover. It was just a little bit of embossed on it, you know, and then the seaside on it, just everything about it. I was starting to fall in love with them then. Like, that was it. It's a 5. Of course, it's a 5. It's fantastic, and it was again one of the toughest calls ever. You know, when we get down to the nitty gritty, what is going to go in this top 3? Fantastic, love it.
You talk about the artwork, and it's like a photograph of a statue by Benjamin Clemens. And it's like St. John's ambulance bearers, which, you know, it's actually, I believe the sculpture's in the Imperial War Museum. And it sort of links to the themes on the album. And I'll get to it in a minute when I come into it. But it sums up a lot of the album as well. The cover, it's a very clever cover. And then you got that real contrast on the background with the beach. And, you know, it's really different.
And Eating Rifles, didn't realise, but when you were buying sounds or NME, it's Heading on the Wall. It's the Army Cadets. That's with Heading on the Wall. They've got the sign. So every time I go to Heading on the Wall, which is like a very lot of times, I keep thinking this is just so good. So, but it was cropped for the single. But when the sounds did the full page, you'd see Heading on the Wall with the Army Cadets.
All right, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Just go dig out them old enemies and our sounds, and fantastic. And another thing I've just remembered, like when you talk. It was the first time I thought, oh, bowling shoes sound, you know, look really cool. So we went bowling just to try them on and nick them. And then we realized after 5 minutes of wearing them that they wouldn't be very good. They were just awful to wear, but they did look quite cool. Sound effect, sorry. Setting Suns, fantastic. It's a 5.
Foxton used to keep his shoes in the fridge, didn't he? Which is really weird. When you see that show and the player in Newcastle City Hall, don't, and it's on that documentary, and the people climbing in through the windows, and he's got a fridge, and he gets all his shoes out of the fridge. It's just bizarre, absolutely nuts, and the fans are going absolutely mental. When we saw Weller at the last gig, I saw him on the 2 nights in Newcastle recently, and he was talking on the first night when I was there. He talked about that gig. He talked about the City Hall, and he said, I used to come here in the old Jam days, and it was absolute pandemonium. And he was saying how great it was, but how bonkers the whole thing was as well. They're very much the band of the people, weren't they, you know? Anyway, Steve, what have you got into number 3?
In the number 3 for me is Sound Effects. And because really it's a tale of two halves, that album, I feel. I love Start, Pretty Green. Monday is probably one of my favorite tracks on the album, but I'm different now. And then, you know, a real banger was Set the House Ablaze. And then, of course, the legendary That's Entertainment, which, you know, is something which, again, people who potentially aren't bang into the Jam, if you like, you know, all love that song. It's, you know, it's a song about, you know, just song about life and people could relate to at the time. But then I think with the exception of Man in the Corner Shop, you know, I struggle with that second half of the album. Dreamtime, Music for the Last Couple, Scrape Away, Boy Bout Town. It's not my bag, that second half of the album, and I always feel a bit disappointed with it in that respect. But again, you know, it scores highly because it's got some absolute Jam classics on there, and it showed again a change in direction. You were coming into the next decade. You know, the 1980s was here, and you know, whenever we go into a decade, you know, whether it's your own personal life, whether it's politics, whatever. It's, it's a new dawn. It's a new generation. There's new fashion. You're coming into to the new wave. Properly now. This is the new wave, and the way that they dress, the way that the hairstyles are developing, and it's a strong album, but I just felt it could have been a bit better, and it's not. It's not my favorite album, but I love Pretty Green. One of those catchy numbers. I think that's that song is one which, as soon as you hear those opening chords, you know exactly what it is. But yeah, I love that. I love that. Start's fantastic, of course. I mean, a bit of plagiarism going on there, I think, from the Beatles, as we all know. Yeah. But it's a great, it's another good album. But it's not in my top two. So marks wise, I'm going to give it a 4.
Right, good, okay. 4 still being excellent, so that's good stuff. Right, well, mine is I've got number 3. I've got Setting Suns. It's a fantastic album. We already know I've hit 5-star territory, so none of them are obviously going to get worse than that. It's got a great double opener, and if you write songs, you'll often find that songwriters write songs in pairs, and I often find it hard to disassociate Girl on the Phone and Thick as Thieves. They're very similar. I wouldn't be surprised if I wrote them both roughly within a day or so of each other. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. What a set of opening songs, though. What a pair of songs. And then we've got that section in the album which is clearly linked in referencing like World War One with Private Hell, Little Boy Soldiers, Wasteland, and Burning Skies. And it goes with the artwork, that sort of St. John's ambulance cast, in 1919, linked into the First World War, the Great Wars, which it's called. And so Weller's got like a little concept going on, and he's telling a story, and it's fabulously written. As Kirk said, then we've had Saturday's Kids, which literally was about what it was like as a kid in the 70s, going into the 80s. And then you've got Eating Rifles, that sort of big political song, which bizarrely David Cameron said it was his favorite song for a while. I mean, really? Has he not listened to the lyrics? That's just nuts. You just wonder what he was doing. So yeah, it's a great album. I'm with Kirk as well. Heatwave is a fantastic version, but really it should, in my opinion, have been a B-side. And they could have probably put one of the other singles that was out at the time, and they probably could have got that on the album instead. It's unnecessary. It's almost like a throwback to something that didn't need to be on. It would have been great on Snap. It would have been great on Snap, but it's not necessary on this album. But it is a 5-star album because it's an album I play a lot. I really love the album. It's superb. It's really well put together, really well produced as well, actually. So yeah, it's Setting Suns for me. Kirk, what have you got on it number 2?
Yeah, I think by the time it will just go back to Setting Suns there. By the time it gets to Heatwave, I turn it off. That would be it. I've had enough now. Number 2, for me, I have the sound effects. When the album actually came out, I can remember going to the shops, going to HMV and getting this album. So it was a great time, and just hearing Pretty Green, which obviously everybody knows, that opening line is just fantastic. And it's just one of those, and it just kind of led us in. I think it's an absolutely brilliant album. Monday, but I'm different now. But Set the House Ablaze as well is absolutely roaring. It's like, I'm sure Block Party nicked that, didn't they, on one of their songs on their first album.
It's the first album, and the first Block Party album, people never heard it. It's Silent Alarm. It is brilliant album. It's a top album, isn't it? Sorry, go on.
Absolutely love it. But when I heard that, I was saying everybody, it's Set the House Ablaze. But of course, people just hearing Block Party for the first time are just going to think, oh, well, it's just a great song. But they completely ripped it off. Start, it just gets better and better. I mean, the second half isn't as good as the first half. And we've got to remember when we were listening to these albums, like today, it's seamless from start to finish. So we don't have that break where we'd listen to an album and maybe we couldn't be asked to turn it over. So we used to just play it again and again. But we used to have to break the album down in 2 halves. And it was kind of, it could be 2 separate things. But today you don't have that. So trying to explain that like halfway through the album, everything kind of changed a bit and maybe give you a different mood. But I quite enjoyed that. And, you know, Boy About Town, Scrape Away, I think it's a super strong album. It's a 5. I have very, very happy memories looking at the cover, trying to work out From the Cradle to the Grave. What we didn't know what that meant. We were like, what does that mean? It's about the NHS, isn't it? So just little things like that. You know, the Jam always kind of for the people. So lovely album, 5, love it.
Right, interesting. Yeah, I mean, great album. Steve, yourself at number 2?
Number 2 and number 1. Wow, what a decision to make. And I actually listened to both albums before I came to do the show, just to make sure. And because you can read track lists, but it doesn't do it justice. So I've listened to both albums. Number 2 is All Mod Cons. And I'm gonna give it a 5 because it's still one of my favorite Jam albums. It's probably one of the most listened to, you know, on my devices. I just love some of the tracks on there. I've already mentioned English Rose, but it's just the storytelling with the lyrics and you know, things like Mr. Clean, you know, wonderful song, wonderful lyrics, and one which, you know, just rolls off the tongue whenever you stick it on. You know all the words. You find yourself singing it in the street when you're walking along, and you know, people looking at you. But obviously, you know, Down in the Tube Station, you know, A Bomb in Water Street, To Be Someone, David Watts. I mean, it's jam packed with absolute, you know, Jam classics. And I think for me, what decided, you know, this being number 2, and obviously the other album which I'm going to announce it is my first one. It was, do I skip any songs? And I do. I skip It's Too Bad. I do skip the Fly song, and you know, for me, that's the only thing that could really divide the 2 albums. They brought out like a deluxe version of All Mod Cons as well on CD a few years ago, and I bought that, and it's just great. I mean, it's definitely, you know, if somebody said to me, I've never listened to the Jam, could you recommend you know, an album or 2, then you know, this would be one of them. So it gets a 5, and it's only in second place because the album that I've got at number 1 is one which I never skip. I listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think also recommending the albums thing is actually really good, because I've got All Mod Cons in at number 2 as well. It's a 5-star album. It's all killer. No filler for me. I think every track on it is brilliant, and it easily could have been number 1 actually in hindsight when I think about it. And what you said before there about, you know, the lyrics to every song on it, is there's not many. I'm rubbish with lyrics, even though I sing and play in a bloody band. I'm rubbish at them, but I know all the lyrics to All Mod Cons. It's one of those albums. I think there's a few albums I know, and this is one of them. You just know all the lyrics to. It's probably the most accessible of all the Jam albums. Came out in '78. It was the 3rd album. There are very few bands, I think, have had such a big jump from the previous album to the next album in terms of quality and songwriting quality. The jump is just phenomenal. To go from pretty good to suddenly outstanding is just incredible in the space in less than a year. It's remarkable. I mean, All Mod Cons was a make or break album for the Jam. If it failed, that was the end of the band. And well, I knew that. He was only, I think he was like 19, 20 when he was writing these songs. It's just amazing. I mean, the intro is just unbelievable. They go together. All Mod Cons and To Be Someone just go together. What a pair of opening songs. As you say, Mr. Clean is literally out of the Ray Davies style of songwriting, isn't it? You know, telling a story. And then ironically, of course, they then cover a Ray Davies song, you know, straight afterwards with David Watts, and do a better version than the Kinks. There are not many bands do better versions than the original, and the Jam do one here. In the Crowd, it's one of the ultimate Jam songs. He still performs it. It's a proper mod classic. And of course, it's just before that huge mod revival in '79 when Quadrophenia came out, and it sparked that enormous revival. People seem to forget about the mod revival of '79 to a point. It was just massive. Some great songs. It's Too Bad. I love Fly, actually. English Rose is beautiful, and it stands out so differently on the album. but it just works beautifully. A-bomb, great. Down in the Tube Station was originally, I didn't know this was initially dumped, but Vic Coppersmith, Evan, the producer, dug it out and said, look, oh, Paul, this has got potential to be a great song. And so he reworked it, and it's just brilliant, you know, a song about right-wing thugs, you know, which is sadly pertinent today, isn't it, unfortunately. But what an album. For me, it's a benchmark album. It would, what I will come down to doing best albums of the year, it will make my top 5 1978 albums. And it's a 5-star album all day. And it was dead close between that and the next album. And it's literally a toss of a coin, which is the better one. It's outstanding, outstanding. Kirk, what have we got next in? What's the big reveal?
The big reveal, all mod cons. I think all we can quite safely say that the top 3 albums are all going to be a 5, and they're just all impossible to choose from. All mod cons, you know, it's that thing when you're getting ready and you want to feel good, you know. All mod cons just goes on 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I mean, what more do you need? I'm ready to go. It's brilliant. I have my copy here, signed copy.
Oh, top man!
It's signed
Classic.
in biro, signed in biro as well. Look at that. It's just I just love that shot. Everything about it is perfect. It's just a great album. It's all out attack, you know. But then it's got English Rose in just to soften it, but it was never mentioned on the sleeve, so just kind of hidden away. What can you say? Every single song, and of course, Down at the Tube Stations at midnight, I think was the first song that I'd ever learned all the lyrics to. And no, I'm not going to sing them, and no, I'm not going to repeat them. But just look at it in her sleeve as well.
Yeah,
oh, man, in the Lambretta, and so just because it's there, you've got a nice mod classic there for you, lads. Just this, I've sold my whole record collection, but some things will never go. You know, you just can't let them go, and this is one of them. 5-star, 100%. If you don't like this album or don't entertain it, you know nothing about music. It is brilliant. Not one. There's nothing I don't like about it. The cover I love about it, even the Polydor bit in the bottom right-hand corner, just everything about it. It tells you about the time. This is you know, this isn't Gino. If this goes on, the whole room gets up, right? It's brilliant. It's a banger. Right, lads, go on then.
Excellent. Steve, you're number 1.
So it doesn't take Columbo to work out that I've picked Second Sons to be my favourite Jam album, which of course gets a 5. I don't skip any of the songs on it. I love it. It's my favourite album. Favourite tracks, Private Hell. Wow. That is my favourite Jam song ever. I love it. It's just one of those things that I used to listen to time and time again on my vinyl of it. Smithers Jones. What a great song, great track. Again, just that storytelling that Weller did so well, not only with his lyrics that he wrote, but the way that he sung it and the way that the music was put. It was fantastic song, that.
It's a Bruce song though, isn't it? It's a Bruce song.
Bruce song, that one, yeah. But just the jams. The Jam's knack of being able to tell a story with songs. Do you know what I mean? It's a thread that runs through all the albums. Yeah. But they were just good storytellers. I think that's what appealed, because they were, you know, you can go back to those songs you just mentioned there about the narrative that runs through some of the songs about things which are still really relevant today. And that's what it was all about. And it's starting to sound like an old codger, don't you, when you start saying those days it was all about the lyrics and telling the story. Well, that's what they were really good at. I love Girl on the Phone. I still love that. I loved it when at the end of the song where, you know, the girl's still on the phone. Hello. Little Boy Soldiers. I mean, you know, again, another brilliant track, Thick as Thieves. I mean, the list is endless. The weakest track, if you're going to ask us what the weakest track is, that the Heat Wave at the end. You know, I think it could have probably found another song to finish the album off, and it would have been probably the most perfect album ever. But yeah, it's great, and of course, Eating Rifles and Saturday as Kids, you know, they're just songs you can listen to any time of the day, any time of the year. You're going to love them. But yeah, Setting Suns is my favorite album, and I love the cover. You know, it's another great cover. All Mod Cons was good, but I love the album cover as well. But 5 again. You know, if you gave a 6, I would give it a 6. That's my top Jam album of all time.
I think you're right as well with regards to his well as lyrics. I think it's the most storytelling album that he does. And there are a number of little vignettes, little stories all the way through the whole album. I think you're dead right with regards to that. Yeah, without a doubt, it's a fabulous album though. But my number one, the big reveal is pretty obvious by the T-shirt. Is Sound Effects. I love the title because it's one of those things. As an English teacher, everything sound effects with an E, but sound affects is what it actually affects you personally. So Sound Effects is just absolutely superb. Came out in 1980. Which it's one of those funny ones because I think 1980 is arguably the greatest year in music, and the amount of unbelievable albums in 1980 is incredible. So when we eventually get to it, whether it makes me top 5, I'm not sure because the year is so strong. But this album is just incredible. Well, I said he was heavily influenced by post-punk bands like Gang of Four, Joy Division, and Wire at the time, and you can tell in the music. But also, it's massively influenced by Revolver by the Beatles, as you can clearly tell on Start, of course. Great opener, Pretty Green, one of the best openers ever. The Americans, I've seen another show with the Americans that didn't really quite understand what Pretty Green was, which is fair enough. It's clearly a British cultural reference to money, but they didn't get it across the pond. Some great songs. Monday's very wistful, beautiful. I'm different now. Power pop, great. Set the House Ablaze. I've just written as a massive tune, and I've just written possibly the highlight of the album. Roaring riff, fantastic ending. It's just amazing. Start/Taxman. Great song though. And what's odd is I'd never heard Taxman at the time. When I heard Start, I'd never heard Taxman. So it's odd, isn't it? When I first heard that album and it comes on, it's the first song, I go, whoa, what the hell's that? So yeah, that was a bit of a shock. That's Entertainment. Again, he still does it now. It's, it summarizes the views at work. It's that kitchen sink storytelling thing that Ray Davies, Pete Shelley, and others do so well, and he's one of the greats at doing it. I love the second side. Dreamtime, Man in the Corner Shop. Man in the Corner Shop's just dead catchy. I love music for the last couple. I just think it's sonically brilliant. It's got space. It's got that weird sound effects put in. It's that post-punk style. Boy About Town's like an early Jam type thing. Actually, it's cocky. It's great. And then Scrape Away is one of my favorite Jam songs. It might well be my top 10 Jam songs. It's brilliant. I love the rhythm on it. It's really powerful. It's just got loads going for it. It's a lovely way to finish the album. It's really driving and motoring. I know Weller thinks this is his favorite Jam album. I think it's hard to say. I think Old Mod Cons might get most people's vote, but Sound Effects gets it for me. It could have included a couple of other songs on it, Going Underground or Dreams of Children's on the US version. But 5 stars, and what an album! What an album! Top album for me. That's the Jam at the peak. So there we go, folks. We've got three different albums, all different. It's quite a surprise.
There's a song that we haven't included, because the Jam have they would release a single with a brilliant B-side. We haven't mentioned The Butterfly Collector.
Oh yes.
Oh
yes.
God. We're not going to let this one go by without mentioning that song. I just think it's fantastic.
Well, when we come to do our top 10 Jam songs, we'll that might well get included actually. So folks, as we said earlier on, please like and subscribe. Let's hit those numbers. Let's get them up, please. Let's leave your thoughts. I know some people have been doing it with a number of the shows now, and it's been great to see them. And if you'd like to appear on the show, just send us a message. So until the next time, from Kurt, Steve, and myself, thank you very much, and to see you again. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.